Hello, English students. My name is Caleb Killam, and welcome to a presentation about the history of war, given to you and made by Caleb M. Killam. All right. First off, we're going to take a look at what war is. A definition of war is a violent conflict between states or nations. But as many of you know, there are many different definitions to war. Though this one says it is a conflict between states or nations, war can also be fought on a much smaller scale, ranging from a family dispute to your body fighting off an infection to even a war being waged in one's own mind, like the war between the good thoughts and the bad thoughts in your brain. Though these are also different examples and definitions of war, the most common is that of a conflict between states or nations. And these type of wars are fought for many reasons, such as the pros of going to war outweighing the cons, economic reasons like needing land and resources that another nation has that nation wants, religious reasons like Catholic and Muslims and every different type of religion fighting for their beliefs, political reasons, obviously for political domination over a nation or a type of people, and ideological reasons, like two people's ideas or different type of, guess, almost lifestyles going up against each other. And these conflicts can be physical and use violence. Different wars like that are the Vietnam War, World War II, World War One, Korean War, etc. All these wars had in common the use of manpower and machinery to be fought. Machinery being guns, weaponry, bullets, obviously all that type of stuff. And manpower obviously being the soldiers and commanders that were in that war. But some wars, especially the Cold War, did not use violence. They used ideas and threats to wage war against one another. The threat being nuclear weaponry being used on the US or the USSR. Those different type of wars. Now let's take a look at the earliest war. The first war ever waged is rather unknown among historians. Archaeologists, though, found a site known and named as Cemetery 117 with a large amount of dead bodies from the Mesolithic era. The Mesolithic era is an era dating all the way back to 13,000 years ago. Arrowheads were used to kill the people involved, and where this was found was along the Egypt-Sudan border. And it contained all these dead bodies. As you can see right here, two archaeologists are excavating the site, and here are different bones. Here's some skulls of the different bodies that were found. And here is some pottery of different nations and peoples going to war. Now let's take a look at the first recorded war. The first recorded war of mankind occurred in Mesopotamia, and it was fought between two forces, Sumer and Elam. The overall victors were the Sumerians, or Sumers, led by Enembaragessi, king of Kish. That was his title. And though this right here is Enembaragessi. Oh, sorry. Right here is Enembaragessi. Here, for some reason, has that. And here is a map. Here is Elam. I could not find where Sumer would be or what it would have been named. But here is just the map of Mesopotamia, or what used to be Mesopotamia. But though this was the first recorded war for mankind, if you were to take the Bible as a history book, the first recorded war wasn't even that of earth. It was that of a war waged in heaven. That war being, obviously, the war between the good and the bad, the light and the dark, the war between God and Saint Michael the Archangel and all of his angels against Satan and all the fallen angels who followed him. though this was not a human war, it is a war nonetheless. Now, I'm going to talk about the most catastrophic wars. Well, human wars. Wars with the highest death tolls in history are World War II, followed by the Second Sino-Japanese War. The World War II had a death toll of over 70 million people, a majority of which were those of civilians. And those civilians, a majority of which were Jews, that were killed in the Holocaust and gas chambers led by the Nazis. Sadly, that happened during that war. Also, the Second Sino-Japanese War was a war that had a death toll of 29 million people, and a majority of which were also civilians, with over 20 million of the deaths being civilians. Here are pictures of the Second Sino-Japanese War over here. As you can see, here is a plane flying overhead. Here are soldiers lining up. Obviously, they used trench warfare as well. And here is World War II trench warfare. Different trenches lining up and taking cover from enemy fire. And obviously, you can't talk about catastrophic wars without the Cold War, which was the most potentially destructive war. Because if it were to have taken onto the physical plane, the war could have ended up damaging many different nations, not only the US and the USSR, but those caught in the crossfire and those allied to the US and to those of the USSR. And also the Vietnam War characterized the cruelty of war. Many soldiers and civilians alike attained serious psychological and physical trauma. Many people involved were maimed and or left with one to many psychological and physical disorders and diseases. Diseases like cancer caused by Agent Orange, agent that was used to destroy foliage and greenery to basically uncover the enemy. Hepatitis C was also attained from many of those who served in the Vietnam War. Hearing problems from shells and gunfire, and other illnesses or ailments attained through their service to the country have affected them. Sorry. Some psychological diseases the soldiers and civilians alike would have attained are PTSD, which stands for post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety, and many other mental conditions, all of which can affect a person's day-to-day life or can happen from years after this event occurred. Now, let's take a look at the least catastrophic war. The least catastrophic war is the Toledo War, with only one person being wounded. And this fight was actually in the US, and it was a fight over a strip of land right here, the Toledo Strip, and it was fought between Ohio and Michigan. Two states you would never think would go to war to each other. Or so you thought. This war was fought back during the early 1800s when lines for the states were still being drawn up. And this war drew many different parties, such as President Monroe and the U.S. Surveyor General, to settle a dispute over to whom the land truly belonged. Ohio claiming it was theirs, and Michigan claiming it was theirs. The only casualty or wounded person happened when Stickney, an Ohio man, stabbed a Michigan sheriff in a tavern fight. That was the only casualty that happened. He didn't even die. He was just stabbed. I think he might have been sent to jail. I don't know. But he obviously wasn't killed in this war. Was kind of just pointless. Over a little sliver of land, as you can see right here. That little bit of land. And obviously we have to talk about the Cold War yet again. Though there wasn't any outright fighting during this war, thus making it bloodless, there was the possibility for an extremely catastrophic war, that of nuclear explosives, that obviously could have destroyed many, many nations and many, many people, but never actually did. And as you can see right here, that's what would have happened. Now, finally, let's talk about the most recent war, which is the Russo-Ukrainian War. Which, if for those of you who don't know, it is the war between Russia and Ukraine, the war that raises gas prices. This war started on February 24th of 2022, and it is still currently going on. The leaders of Russia is President Vladimir Putin, and the leader of Ukraine is President Vladimir Zelensky, which is over here. Here's Zelensky. Over here is Vladimir Putin. Here's a picture of the Russians coming in and taking over. But this conflict, the Russia versus Ukraine conflict, has been growing since Russia's annexation of Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula back in 2014. On February 21st, 2021, Russia sent troops into Ukraine on what they called a quote-unquote peacekeeping mission. But after only a few days, that mission turned into a full-fledged invasion, that few days being February 24th. This war is still going on, and Russia and Ukraine are still fighting each other to this day. And no one knows who's going to win yet. Here are my sources. Here's a little Bitmoji of me. And finally, the end. Thank you for your time.